Welcome to the Crossing King Garage. I'm Randy.
And I'm Kristen.
And we welcome you today to a November ranking that makes good sense. For a lot of years, James Bond, the new pick, would come out in November. So we're bringing you our ranking of all of the actors who have played James Bond. Now, we know you're probably going to have some opinions on this, and we totally expect our feed to get melted down because this is a pretty passionate project. Those of us who've been around since the 60s when James Bond first appeared on the cinema have got a very, very strong opinion about who these cats are and how they've done with our favorite character. I would highly, highly, highly recommend go and read Ian Fleming's novels. Go and read them. They're easy. They're quick, easy pulp fiction to read. And you can get them on eBay for cheap. So, go and read Ian Fleming's. Look at those descriptions. There's also a phenomenal book out there called The Autobiography of James Bond that does a great job of filling in some gaps. I have it here in the Crossing King Garage
I think
somewhere.
it might be this.
Oh, yeah, there it is. It's by John Pearson. I bought this off of eBay. It was a library book. In fact, that's where I read it from originally, was a library in Florida. And it is outstanding as far as a fill in the gaps for early Bond. Go and read the books. We promise, promise, promise. It will enlighten you as to this favorite quintessential film spy.
We've talked about Bond before on our channel with costumes with Cornelius. The card will be up here, as well as our book recommendations where we recommended Casino Royale to you. Again, card is hopefully floating above my head right now. Please go back and look at those, as we did talk a good bit about how much we love this classic spy.
I thoroughly, it's just escapism, pure escapism. James Bond has been in our culture since the 60s and continues to fascinate filmgoers, especially as they begin talking about who they think would be the next James Bond. Now,
it's gotten to the point folks are taking bets on who's going to be named.
There's going to be money made, probably.
There's going to be money made, and not just by the actor who plays Bond.
Not by us.
Not by us.
We just don't do that. But we find it fascinating to see how the odds rank. Now, we've chosen not based on any of those odds, and we'll get to that after we rank these. These are all good actors. Please don't get us wrong. We had to put them in some kind of order, and this is the order that we have chosen. You know, our opinion, we certainly respect and admire and want to hear what your opinion is. Now, first of all, let's go back in chronological order as we can. Please help me along with this.
Yep, it
all
goes
right?
Sean, then George, Lazenby.
Then back to Sean.
Then back to Sean. Then, well, Roger Moore kind of overlapped with Sean as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then Timothy Dalton, and then Pierce Brosnan, and then Daniel Craig.
Bond the Blonde. Anyway, so you're going to see some absolute opinions as we go from here. But as they say on a popular news channel, we report, you decide. So let us know. We'll get her kicked off today. Number 6. We're going 6-1, and then we're going to tell you about who we think would make the next best James Bond. So,
all right, let's go, Dad.
All right. It's obvious for us that Daniel Craig is probably our least favorite.
James Blonde himself.
Yeah, there is that. Anyway, there's some real criticism. Please don't misunderstand us. We think Daniel Craig's a good actor.
Yes.
We thoroughly admire his and his wife's wedding.
Rachel Weisz.
Rachel Weisz, one of our favorite actresses. They have a strong Hollywood marriage. And we just think he's a good actor. We think, however, that Bond has a level of fascination, a level of cosmopolitanism, if you will, of class, that Daniel Craig just did not quite get up there.
My issue with Daniel is that his Bond feels a little bit more like Bourne. He feels more like Jason Bourne than James Bond.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
That's kind of the thing.
More of the brutal side of James Bond than the finesse and sophistication of James Bond. Again, highly recommend that you go back and read the books and see how Ian Fleming paints this character in his origin stories. So, we're going to put Daniel Craig at number 6. Again, some of you may totally disagree with that. We think most of you will agree.
All right.
Number 5.
Number 5 in our ranking, we have Roger Moore. Do not hate us. I know. If it was just me making this list, Roger would actually be at the bottom. I don't know what it is. Roger Moore has always been my least favorite Bond.
He is the Bond that is so much fun. I was introduced to James Bond by Roger Moore. That's why we argued about Roger Moore getting higher than Daniel Craig.
Mm-hmm.
I was introduced to Roger Moore being James Bond. And in retrospect and going back and watching those films, they are quite a bit more campy. They are quite a bit less, still a sophistication level that Sean, put up there, but there's a lot of just silly things
I
in
will
there.
say this, though. He does have 2 of the best villains.
Absolutely.
In The Man with the Golden Gun, Christopher Lee.
Yes.
And
Jaws.
Christopher Walken. Well,
Oh.
yeah, Jaws also, but Jaws eventually becomes a good guy. But
Right.
also Christopher Walken's bad guy from A View to a Kill.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of the best bad guys, Kristen's got a great point, came from the Roger Moore series of films. And with I think he and Daniel Craig tie for the number of films that they made. No,
Roger has a ton.
more. Roger has like 7.
Yeah, 7 or 8.
Yeah, he has the most of James Bond
any
films
Bond,
of
yeah.
any Bond.
Of any
and
Bond
his
actor.
earlier stuff was really pretty good.
Yes.
Um,
As we get more into like the late 70s, early 80s, I think is when he stopped.
Kristen mentioned A View to a Kill, and
It gets a little ridiculous.
almost to the point of campiness.
He's the Bond that dressed up like a clown, guys. No disrespect to Roger Moore. When he was in his serious moments, he had it.
And let's face it, Roger Moore was the saint in television too, and did a very, very good job of that. Roger Moore has had some other movie film roles that were kind of tongue-in-cheek points. He played a spy in Cannonball Run, which was kind of a tongue-in-cheek salute back to James Bond. So go and check out Roger Moore's filmography. And then Daniel Craig's too. Daniel Craig was in Tomb Raider and some other films as well. Some really highly rated films. But those 2 guys are at the bottom of our list for the reasons that we've equated.
All right, number 4.
George Lazenby. This, I think, is the most
one and done
underrated James Bond. And he went from being basically an underwear model to being James Bond and knocking it, again, in my opinion, completely out of the park. Now, he also had a very good bad guy in Telly Savalas playing Blofeld. And George Lazenby was a very good Bond. George Lazenby also was the one who got married.
And lost his wife on the same day.
Lost his wife. So George Lazenby's Bond plays into
The emotion?
Absolutely. The emotional side of James Bond and a lot of the character-driven portions of who Bond is. And sets up all the films afterwards for playing on that loss, if you will.
Until Roger Moore decided it was a good idea to campily chuck Blofeld down a chimney.
A chimney. Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway.
George Lazenby, we wish you would have made at least one more Bond, just so that we could have seen some continuity there. But we salute you for the ones that you have done. And had you done more, you would have probably been higher up on this ranking.
Yes, sir. All right. Number 3. This is the Bond I was originally introduced to Bond through. That's why he's as high up on this list as he is. Timothy Dalton. He only did 2 Bonds. Both of them are fantastic.
Both of them are fantastic. And then Bond got tied up in court for several years. Timothy Dalton would have made more James Bond films, but there was some kind of legalities that got intermixed between.
Timothy was also a placeholder Bond. It was supposed to be Pierce in Living Daylights, but he was tied up with Remington Steele.
Yeah, and CBS wouldn't let him out of his contract.
NBC, I think, but either way, whoever the network was wouldn't let him out of his contract. So they hired Timothy. And Timothy did 2 Bonds, but like Dad said, then some legal stuff happened, so he just wound up not doing more. Pierce was available.
It was the longest stretch without a James Bond film, from Timothy's last to Pierce's first in cinema history, except for perhaps right now, where they're deciding who will be the next Bond, and quite honestly, Hollywood's on strike.
Yeah.
So.
But Timothy, he's got this strange gentleness to him.
And there's a panache
Yeah,
and
there's-
sophistication about
yes.
Timothy Dalton
And-
that really just harkens back to what Sean Connery did with the character.
He also has a fair bit of emotion to him as well. I think it's License to Kill when Felix and his wife are directly attacked. Felix's wife gets
Yes.
assaulted and killed. Felix gets almost mauled to death by a shark. And Timothy Bond just goes off the reservation and is just like, no, I'm avenging my friend and you're not going to stop me.
One of the many times
Many
Bond
times he goes off the
reservation.
reservation, but this is the one that I always remember.
Yeah, I think Kristen hit on something, and I touched on it too. Every person who loves these films was introduced to one of these specific artists as James Bond. We've got the generation from of Daniel Craig. They're a worldwide phenomenon with some of his earlier films as Bond. There's a generation introduced. Daniel Craig may always be James Bond to them. My generation was Roger Moore. The generation prior to me, Sean Connery. George Lazenby, I'm sorry, you just don't have a generation. Timothy Dalton, Kristen's generation, was introduced as Bond to them.
He was the first one I was introduced to, but I think more my generation would probably recognize Pierce
Exactly, yeah.
as Bond. But again, that was just the first one I was allowed to watch.
We think Timothy Dalton was an exquisite Bond.
Yes, he
On our
absolutely
rankings,
was.
however, he's still not quite to the level of our top two. Now, this is going to be a shock for everyone who is watching. We have at number 2, Sean Connery. Now, this makes me sad.
Please
Yes.
no, this is more like a tie, but for the sake of numbers, we have to go 1 then 2.
Yeah, for the sheer, Sean Connery was James Bond. Now, there were a couple of things that were working against him. He was Scottish, not British. And then later on, he comes back to do Never Say Never Again, which was a remake of Thunderball. And it just,
it's an unofficial Bond also because it came out the same year as Octopussy did.
Right, and it was made by a guy who was mad at Eon Productions. There's a whole lot of drama tied up in that. Go look at online for that drama. But Sean Connery, the reason he's at number 2 is, yes, he fits. Yes, he was the originator of the role. But we just feel like this number 1 person did a better job of fulfilling the totality of who James Bond character was.
It also didn't help that after the 4th movie he did, Sean Connery really stopped liking being Bond.
And he kind of phoned it in.
And he started kind of phoning it in.
And then the whole hairpiece thing, it really became an issue with his age as it got older and older. By the time Diamonds Are Forever, we love Sean Connery. Please don't get me wrong.
He is an iconic actor. He is Indiana Jones' dad. He's a Highlander. He sings about a pretty Irish girl in Darby O'Gill and the Little People. He is James Bond. We love and we miss him.
Without doubt.
Just those last couple of Bonds that he did, it was clear he didn't really want to do them.
And everything that you read about that time period, he was pretty vocal about the fact he didn't want to. And so that's why he's at number 2. Please, don't misunderstand. He defined Bond. James Bond.
But the number 1, my favorite Bond, and Dad and I actually had an animated conversation about who should be number 1. We have Pierce Brosnan.
As Kristen said, Pierce Brosnan was supposed to have taken over the mantle from Roger Moore. But because of the negotiations with the television network he was tied up in the television show Remington Steele, they kind of slipped him a sideways hook and eliminated him from being that, just to kind of boost the ratings of the television show that he was on at the time, Remington Steele. And so you find him waiting in the wings until it's his time. And when it becomes his time with GoldenEye,
he enters, wow.
It's a GoldenEye, in my opinion, it is one of the absolute top Bond films ever. GoldenEye is just, it brings Bond back from the campiness and some of the silly things of Roger Moore, and it really, really does a good job of bringing back James Bond to that Ian Fleming developed character.
Pierce also, he just brings all the best bits of the Bonds before him. He brings in the suaveness. He also has a touch of Timothy's gentleness. He has George's emotion and Roger's wit. Like, he just brings all of the past Bonds and actually mushes them into his portrayal of the character.
Having said that, I will say GoldenEye is his best picture.
Yes,
of
GoldenEye
his
four.
Yeah.
GoldenEye is his best. His first is his best. But in my opinion, none of them are straight up bad. Yes, his last one is campy and has bad CGI.
It really borders on some of the last things that Roger Moore did, too.
Not Pierce's fault.
Right.
Pierce kept his performance as straight as he could. That movie is the fault of the writers wanting to throw in as many references to past Bonds as they could because it was the 20th anniversary.
Something like that, yeah.
It was some kind of anniversary happening. It's not on Pierce. Stop blaming Pierce for Die Another Day. So, yeah, Pierce Brosnan, he's always been my favorite Bond. I think the first movie of his I saw was The World Is Not Enough. Pierce Brosnan is a phenomenal Bond, and he is our number one Bond.
He's our number one. Tell us what you think. We nicely, please be nice. We're a family-oriented YouTube channel, and we like to keep it clean. So please be nice. We totally understand that this is a, believe it or not, in the world of entertainment, this is a pretty volatile question. Who was the best Bond? And everybody has an opinion, and we value yours. Mm-hmm. Let us know how you would rank all 6 of these fellas.
And now for the second most volatile thing in Hollywood nowadays.
Who's next?
All right, so my top pick is somebody nobody has talked about or thought of. Matthew Lewis. If you don't recognize the name straight off, he's Neville Longbottom from the Harry Potter franchise. He's the right age. He has grown up gorgeous. He's very tall. He's got brown hair, so he matches Ian Fleming's description.
Go and look at the dude's pictures from some of the Harry Potter fan outings. He would certainly take care of this role. Kristen and I fought over who was going to get to choose him. In fact, Matthew Lewis, Neville would do a phenomenal job. He's the right height, he's the right hair color, he's the right age.
He's the right build.
Barbara Broccoli, call the man, please.
Like, if any of you ever happen to meet him at a Comic-Con before the next Bond is picked, see if you can get him to say it just to see how it sounds.
Bond.
James Bond. All right, but my second pick, in case they aren't so smart as to snatch Matthew Lewis up, I have picked Aaron Taylor Johnson. He is one of the names that has surged forth in the runnings for Bond since Bullet Train came out. I think he could pull the role off. He was Quicksilver in the MCU. He's about to be Kraven for Sony Marvel. So he definitely has the physique down and can probably do a lot of the fighting. I've not seen him in a classy type role, so I don't know how well he'd be able to do the suaveness. But in interviews I've seen, he seems like a real classy guy, so I think he could pull that off quite well. And so yeah, Aaron Taylor Johnson, I think he'd do okay.
2 phenomenal picks. Absolutely 2 phenomenal picks.
But Matthew Lewis is my top pick.
Well, he's both of our top picks. I mean, Kristen snagged him, and so she called dibs. And dibs is an important thing here at the Frosty Kid Garage. So I'll have to get her quicker next time. My 2 picks, sans Kristen's, okay, which are phenomenal picks. And absolutely, guys, I wonder if Aaron Taylor Johnson doesn't need to bulk up a little bit more. You know, he seems kind of skinny.
Check out his pictures from Kraven. He's bulked up a bit for that.
Go look at Sean Connery in the original Bond film. So go look at Sean Connery in Dr. No. He's not a bulked up character in that role either. My picks, one is absolutely obvious, and he's always one of the top ones mentioned in this conversation.
He actually auditioned for Bond when Daniel got picked.
He did, and he was like runner-up for Daniel Craig. Mm-hmm. I don't understand that one, but Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill is Superman. Henry Cavill has been a baddie in Mission Impossible Fallout.
And he was Napoleon Solo in the film version of Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Which is a favorite. Go watch Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Ignore Armie Hammer. Watch it for Henry Cavill.
Watch it for Henry Cavill. But also, he's The Witcher. So he knows how to carry off these quintessential iconic characters. Absolutely. Henry Cavill. Caveat, he's getting a little older, but let's face it, Sean was in his 60s when he shot Never Say Never Again. Roger was in his 60s.
Roger was in his 60s when he finished being Bond.
Exactly.
Age is but a number if the guy is fit, and Henry Cavill is.
Henry Cavill can pull off suave, sophisticated. Again, Man from U.N.C.L.E. Go watch it. He can also pull off brutal, Mission Impossible, Fallout. He can also pull off very...
emotional?
He can do emotional. I haven't seen The Witcher, but I'm told that is one of those roles where he can really, really pull off his acting chops. Henry Cavill is my top pick, and I think he is in the running still.
But Barbara Broccoli's pretty much told everybody, no, we're trying to get somebody younger.
And it just really depends upon what kind of Bond they want to do. Again, Eon Productions, Barbara Broccoli, we hope you're fans of Crossing Kin. Please subscribe and make sure that you at least listen to the fans. That's one thing that's going to be very, very important. Yes, you have a legacy from your father, Cubby, to bring about. This is a very important pick, entertainment-wise. In the scope of everything that matters, who cares? Bond is not life-threatening, okay? But it is important in entertainment, and we really want you to knock this out of the park. No more blonde Bonds, okay? No, this is going to sound sexist, and I don't mean it that way. Bond is a guy, okay? All right? So let's carry on from there. My second pick fits all of the check boxes. You've seen him in all three of the Hobbit films. He played Killy in the Hobbit films. Aidan Turner, okay? Aidan Turner is about 37, 38, maybe 39. He's not quite 40 yet. He is perfect physicality. He pulled those off in the Hobbit role. He has done everything. He knows how to do a series, 3 Hobbit films. So, I mean, he gets what would be expected of him when he signs on the dotted line.
Also, he was the dwarf with the love story. So, I mean...
He wooed the elf.
He wooed Tariel.
He was the Bond in the Hobbit. He already played the role. You just as well give it to him. So, the Hobbit's James Bond was Killy. So, you've heard it here first at Crossing Kin, folks. Where else are you going to hear that? Nowhere
else.
So those are my 2 picks. Henry Cavill, he is a phenomenal actor. Aidan Turner, love him as a phenomenal actor. Henry Cavill, I think, checks all the boxes. Aidan Turner is a younger, checks off all the boxes. Matthew Lewis. Please, Barbara, talk to the man.
Talk to Matthew Lewis.
He knows how to carry off a series. There were a zillion...
8 Harry Potter films over the course of 13 years.
No Bond has ever done that many films, okay? Call Matthew Lewis, okay? Call Aaron Taylor Johnson. Call Henry Cavill.
He wants the role.
Call Aidan Turner. Yeah, Henry Cavill wants the role, and he would be exquisite. Any 4 of these guys would be pleasing to the Crossing Kin family, and, that is a must for Eon Productions, is to make sure Crossing Kin and its subscribers are happy.
Well, that's our picks, guys. Who are your picks for James Bond? Please let us know. There's only about 11 billion of them. I think just about every male in Hollywood has been named as a pick for James Bond. I saw a thing the other day that said Russell Crowe was an option as James Bond.
And
I disagree highly, but whatever. You do you, whoever put forth that suggestion.
And that's okay. We respect that. I mean, totally respect it. And this is a place where we disagree like family. It's okay for you to have your opinions and for us to have our opinions. We love the differentiation. And you've probably thought of somebody no one has thought of before. Perhaps you could even get a credit in the film. Like Matthew Lewis. Neville Longbottom. Neville Longbottom. Doesn't quite have the same ring.
Not quite, but I think he could say Bond.
And that's our salute to James Bond. We hope that you've liked it. We hope you found it entertaining. We hope that you agreed with some of it. If you didn't, again, let us know. And do the things that we always do.
Be sure to like, share, subscribe.
Ring that notification bell.
so you know every time we upload. And until next time, I'm Kristen.
I'm Randy, and from the Crossing Kin Garage.
Bye!